Here we are again talking about coaching. And as always, I'm here with Sivash and Yannick.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, guys. And today's question is, where are good places for me to advertise myself as a coach? What do you guys think?
I always jump in first. Sivash, maybe you want to take this one because I know you've got quite a bit of experience with advertising, but also I know you've got a perspective on advertising in general that I have an assumption I know where that's going to go, but I'd love to hear from you first on this one.
No, well, the first thing that came up for me was Tinder. I haven't actually used it yet, but I just imagine, people, see, a life coach, maybe, let me, I don't know which way you swipe for approval.
Right.
You up?
I like where this is going.
I think part of me thinks like the more places you put yourself, like directories, the better, right? There are so many great places to put yourself.
Which ones? Because I've had very, very mixed reviews of directories. Mainly I don't really get a lot of business from any of the directories. So I'd love to hear what works.
Yeah. I've had a few clients that did quite well with directories, but I think it's really important that you have, the messaging is good on it, that people are clear on what you help them with, what you can do. So it probably differs again from person to person. Mm-hmm. I think the coach that used that, she got a bit of help in terms of the copy and the messaging.
Yeah, and I think that's super important. That if directory, the ones that had success with that, for example, Life Coach Directory worked for a few people that I met, a few, but the ones that worked for, it tended to be career coaching. It tended to be something that was where the issue was very well defined, mm-hmm. and the outcome was very well defined, mm-hmm. and they had compelling copy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, jokes aside, I think I personally wouldn't put myself on Tinder or anything. I think advertisement can be if done in a good way. I know there are coaches doing it, with Google advertisement, Facebook advertisement. They spend money, but they have a system for that, mm-hmm. right? I think for most coaches, especially if they don't want to spend a lot of money, just taking a different approach can be more useful. Really seeing it as a relationship business and not just putting their offers out there, because the way I see it, right? If you put yourself out there saying like, who wants to buy coaching, right? It's almost like trying to buy something, right? I think with coaching, it just doesn't work like that. It's not effective. Like if you see a book, right, you might look at the front cover, back cover and say like, okay, well, that book could be useful. But with a coach, it's very different. So I think with coaching, right, there's a few steps that go before that. And I think it's more around getting people to know you, right? Building that trust for people to actually understand like how you can help them. Maybe even reading some stories about how you've helped others. So, and Facebook, Instagram, like LinkedIn, they're great for that. They're great for actually sharing stories, sharing your work. And again, of course, confidentiality is really important in coaching. So doing it in a way where nobody can recognize the person, mm-hmm. right? Changing, the name, maybe changing the gender, just really being playful and making sure that the person cannot recognize who that is, right? But actually sharing some real examples of, work that you've done with people. And again, that's where, somebody might listen to it and say, well, I don't have paid clients. Well, go do some free coaching, right? Get some experience, and again, these things, they don't need to be testimonials that people write to you, right? I might coach John, and John in the session says, hey, you know what, that was really useful. And I can just make some notes and say, well, John came with this problem and I coached him around this. And this is what we end up with at the end of the session. And that could be just a story that I share.
Yeah. John might also have worked with a coach that and got some fantastic results. We can advertise coaching, or we can tell stories about coaching in general. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be my coaching. I mean, I don't want to make something sound like it's my coaching, but I can promote coaching as an approach to helping people figure something out. If you hear a fantastic story of somebody working with a coach, I'd be sharing that story. of somebody working with a coach getting fantastic results. And this is not like my friend worked with a coach and he's got fantastic results story, but more like a human story of growth and development and learning. I mean, coaching stories make for fantastic stories that can be told without being a coach, even just because they're compelling. Mm. And I think an important point here is one thing is that you pay for advertising in order to sell your services or to promote something. Like you pay a fee in order to get your message out there. And the other one is getting a message out there in regardless of what way, right? If you start telling stories about coaching or human growth and development or learning, you start telling compelling stories on any sort of social media platform, in a way you're advertising something, but it's not the kind of advertising that I would associate with where can I advertise as a coach? When I hear the question, I'm thinking, where can I pay to get my message seen by exactly the kind of people that I want? Mm. I also wanted to pick you up on something with the advertising systems, right? I also know quite a few coaches who figured out how to advertise on Google AdWords, for example, or on Facebook or on Instagram, LinkedIn. There's lots of places where you can advertise. I think you need to figure out where to advertise. Well, where is the attention of your people, right? Where are the people that you want to work with, where they're looking? Right. And then you want to place a message there. I think that's what advertising is about. The advertisers make it easy for you, or as easy as possible for you, to get that message directly in front of those people that are your ideal clients. And you need to figure out, what is the language I need to speak? What is the imagery that I need to show? What is the pain point I need to pick up on, or the desire, the goal that these people have? And, ideally I say, hey, Dave Matthews, and I know exactly what Dave Matthews' issue is, or what their desire is. And then I place my message in relation to that, so that Dave Matthews will find it compelling. They would feel obliged. They couldn't help but pay attention to that and wanting to know more. I think that's excellent advertising. But if you want to go the advertising route, you really need to figure out your niching. Niching is always a debate, and we had a episode on this. But if advertising is the first point of contact to you, then you have to niche. There's no way around it, I think.
The marketing message becomes really important when you want to advertise. And again, I think there are people that are doing it well, right? I think it's just finding people that are doing it and modeling it. But again, usually it will require a lot of money and a lot of testing. And again, it can work for some people, right? I know that there are coaches that have tried it and it didn't work for them because their messaging, their niching wasn't as clear, right? So if you're a life coach just trying to help everyone and anyone, you're going to struggle with that. But if you're very specifically around helping professional men, in their 40s lose weight, it could work.
Yeah, you're going to struggle with advertising, right? If you're a life coach and you're helping anyone and everyone, and you go out there and you have conversations with everyone and anyone, and then when you hear their stories, you position your life coaching services based on what they just told you, it can definitely work without a niche. But if it's advertising, there's no way around it, because otherwise you're just shouting, hey, you, and Dave Matthews is not going to turn his head.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being relatively quiet because I guess actually, that's a bit of a gap in my business setup right now. I haven't done much advertising previously. I'm very much of the prosperous coach kind of mindset on having conversations, all that stuff that feels a bit more authentic to me, to my voice, and to the kind of people I imagine coaching. But that said, recently again, I have, because I'm working remotely a lot and stuff, I have revisited the idea of something like Instagram, and again, trying to find an authentic message and voice and my niche, and my tribe, so to speak, is all kind of very much at the forefront of my mind. So this conversation is really, again, useful, inspiring, and helpful in my own kind of current stage with this journey. But yeah, advertising is a subject that has remained quite elusive and challenging for me. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation once again.
Yeah, it always fascinated me. First, I didn't want to have anything to do with it because there was this association of manipulation through advertising, and too many people wanting you have to go right into people's pain points and then sell them a solution. Really exacerbate what the problem is, so that people, feel so much pain because you brought it to their awareness sometimes that they buy into it. And I'm like, this feels icky. But once I understood advertising as simply a way of building a bridge between the help that you offer and somebody who might want that kind of help, regardless of whether they have problems or not, that made a lot of sense to me. And is it worth paying for? Well, for the longest time, I didn't want to pay for it because I didn't want to pay the advertisers. And now I'm experimenting a bit. Just very recently, experimented a bit because we wanted to scale the coaching lab, and it made perfect sense that that's something that could be advertised because it's not necessarily based on a relationship someone has with me. The price point is not very high, so it made a lot of sense just to bring it to people's awareness in some way. And I thought it was going to be so simple of just I just take the little Eventbrite image that I've made and I put it out there and I say, hey, people, why don't you come? And I pick the right audience. And then I had to learn a lot in terms of, well, no, that's not how it works. And you need to do experimentation with A and B and maybe C and D. And then it takes 4 to 12 months until advertising actually starts showing the kind of results. So unless you're committed to at least a 3 months process, and the cost was immense in terms of setting it up and working with somebody who actually knows what they're doing. We then started experimenting with somebody who was at the beginning of that kind of journey and made us a really good deal because they're trying to break into the industry. But then you spend a lot of time talking to that person. They ask you a ton of questions. They need to understand what your audience is, what your service is about. And then you need to go through a lot of experimentation. And all of the experimentation is going to cost you money, right? So unless you're fully committing to, at least a good couple of grand to put into advertising, so you learn what works and what doesn't, chances are you're gonna waste your money. So
I don't want to scare people, but I probably wasted around 20,000 last year on advertising. And the thing is, there are people that make it work, and it's really important to find the right person. Right? We found someone that was recommended, and 4 or 5 colleagues, together with us, they invested, and each person invested probably 15,000, 20,000. We all lost money because that person wasn't as good as, they had hundreds of testimonials, but they weren't good at what they did. So it's also being really careful, and we learned it in the hard way, because you can do it very carefully. Like if you spend £100, $100, seeing okay, am I getting something out of it? And it's not expecting overnight result, but it's taking it one step at a time. Because at some point, when you spend a few hundred or 500 to 1,000, you should get at least something out of it, at least get a conversation out of it, right? And again, this is probably a much longer conversation, but I think it's important to understand the journey a potential client goes through. We're all familiar with coaching schools, right? Most coaching schools get their clients, the customers, through advertisement. They have an advertisement that leads to a free session, an introduction session, and then from there, they can sign up for the actual course. And the thing is great. Nobody actually complains oh, you tricked me to get into the free session and now I paid for this. Actually, people are very grateful that they saw that advertisement, right? So I think I love what you said around building the bridge, right? So I see selling very much as service. It's a way to help more people. And marketing is the same thing, right? But it's about doing it in a way that's ethical, doing it in a way that, feels good, right? It's very transparent. But yeah, I think advertising is so important, and there's just so many different ways of doing it, right? understanding that we can do it in ways now with social media. We you can create a YouTube channel. It's like having your own TV channel. You can create your own podcast like we're doing right now, where you can actually educate people, you can entertain people. There's so many different ways to actually advertise and get in front of people and get people to understand what you do and get people to experience what you do and to add value, to create value. Right. And I think, we see a lot of extremes in the coaching world, and most of them are actually done by marketers. They're not actually coaches. But if you look at coaches, they're coaches using advertisement in great ways. If you look at some coaches, you look at their advertisement or how they do the advertisement. If you actually go through their emails or the articles they put out, it's just great. Like they actually use the content, the stuff that they do with the clients that pay them tens of thousands of dollars. They actually just put it out there.
Could you give an example of someone who you recommend or you think does it particularly well, so that we can check it out?
Someone very well known in the industry is Rich Litvin, right? So, I spent a lot of money working with him. And again, all his articles are actually written for clients.
Wow, cool.
So if you read his articles, you get a lot of value from it. And again, it's a great way actually as a coach to really think about, well, if I want my advertisement or my way of marketing, if I just want to give people like a taster, they don't actually get any full experience of me, right? But if I put, a 30-minute video or an article, like he spends on average an hour, 2 hours on an article, right? It gives people like real good experience of who he is. Nice. And again, I think it also takes pressure off us as coaches. We don't need to put 5 posts every day out, right? Because then we just kind of get into the noise. We can just create one piece of quality content every week. Right. Again, this is a much longer conversation, but I just want to share with people that, advertisement can be done in a very different way. Because if you do one quality content, whether it's video, podcast, or written, over once a week, over a year, you have a lot of quality pieces that are out there. And then you can share that with people.
Yeah, because essentially advertising is the opening to a relationship. Yeah. When coaches advertise, that's always the case. And for most other products, it's also the case. People buy into things when they feel there's some sort of relationship. And let's not get into the product conversation, but like if it's a coach, it's definitely an opening to a relationship. That's what you're offering. Whether you start with that relationship by sharing something about yourself or by asking a question or by starting a conversation somehow through a social media post, a book you've written, an article, a podcast. All of these are openings to creating a relationship. And whether that's a one-way relationship for first couple of months or whatever, if somebody's just consuming from you, there will be, like when I listen to a podcast, I'm in a conversation. They just don't hear my voice, right? They sparking thoughts from me. I'm asking questions. They might not respond to it. Sometimes they might respond to it unknowingly. But a good podcast, I feel I'm in a conversation with somebody. A good book. Tony Robbins writes books in a way that you feel you're in a conversation with him. That's, think of Tony Robbins what you will, but that's written in a really engaging relationship kind of style. And so good advertising is the same thing. And, a social media post, it's not advertising you pay for. When you pay for it, it just means you get it out to way more people. So once you know what works when you don't pay for it, maybe you have a good entrance into just taking that and boosting it out there. And if that's paid for and it works for you and you're willing to experiment with it, then, you might have a really winning system that you can turn on and off when you need new leads.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to close it there.
Yeah. There's we often recommend books. There's a little book, and honestly, it's worth its weight in gold. It's called Show Your Work. And this is just such a great book.
Cool.
Connecting to this question around advertising. And it just takes actually things in a very different way. Very much like what we talked about, some of the things we mentioned around really sharing your work, because you don't want people to get an idea of who you don't get you want people to get an idea of you, who you really are, compared to then like the marketing persona that you just put out there.
Nice.
Right. And we see this with restaurants. I used to work in a restaurant, and they just had a cake, like this big piece of cake, and nobody was buying it. And I just came up with an idea. I said, hey, can I just experiment with something? The guy was like, well, we'll do whatever, because we have to throw it away at the end of the day. So I just cut it into pieces and gave it away for free. And people was like, oh, that's really nice. And they start buying more.
Amazing.
And essentially that's what we want to do here, is we want to show people our work, because they get an idea of who we are and what we do. They get the real taste, right? They want more. Yeah, that's a really a small book that, I think I've given it away to so many people, and it's really good.
Oh, your work. Who's the author?
Austin Kleon.
Austin Kleon. Right.
Cool.
Thank you.
That was great. That really inspired me. Gonna get the book.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, and let us know what's been useful for you.
Yeah, and thank you, Facebook, if you're still listening. Thanks, Emola, if you're still there. And we hope you find that valuable. If you want to share this, you can share this, or we cut it up, into our individual episodes. And they usually come out every 2 weeks after we've got the edited versions. So we've got a little bit more of a schedule recently. Thanks to Esther. Esther, shout out. Thank you so much for helping us with uploading, etc. And if you guys have questions, send us a question. We've got a link somewhere. If you go to our Facebook page, you will see the link in the first post. You can always also email us. I think it's talkingaboutcoaching@gmail.com. Or go to the form, send us a question, where we're always keen to hear what you guys want to know about.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Take it easy.
Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your commitment to learning and growing as a coach. Just a few things before you go. First of all, we're doing this for you. So if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, do send us a question. Secondly, we're not doing this for profit, so we rely on your support to help us reach as many coaches as we can. So if you can send this episode to a friend or tell a fellow coach about what we're doing here, maybe you can subscribe or leave us a review, or even support us on Patreon. That would be amazing. And lastly, you can find us across all major platforms. So whether you like to watch, or you like to listen, or you like to download episodes and listen to it in your car while you're driving through somewhere with no internet, you can do so too. And that's it from us. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.